When you join Sam's Club, you get way more than you'd expect. You don't just get value. You get insider tips from fellow members. You don't just pick up a pizza. You actually vote on its toppings. Bacon crumbles. You don't just visit the club, because with the Sam's Club app, everywhere can be the club. You don't just shop the latest finds. You find your people. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Come join us. Sam's Club.
So get this. 57% of Gen Z say the American dream of owning a home is dead. Not dying, dead. And they're the same generation looking at Portugal and Mexico City for a future. If you think this is just a real estate story, hang on. There's something deeper going on.
So get this, John. In March, Fannie Mae backed its first crypto-collateralized mortgage. So you can now pledge Bitcoin instead of cash on your down payment.
Fannie Mae, the backbone of American mortgage lending, accepting Bitcoin.
Yeah, the way it works is a buyer pledges Bitcoin to fund a down payment on a home. The crypto sits in custody for the life of the loan. And Better's CEO wants to eventually let people pledge other things like Apple stock and Amazon stock and anything publicly traded to fund it.
Libby, my only question is, why would this even need to exist?
Yeah, because 4 in 10 American families can't clear the down payment hurdle, even when they have the wealth sitting in their other assets. The traditional path we've found out just doesn't work anymore. And John, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of when we were talking about witches, the architect who hired the witch to help close on her house.
Oh, yeah. Lottery over logic. When the system stops working for people who understand systems, they'll try anything.
Yes. So Bitcoin down payments or manifestation spells, we went into the data to understand what's actually pushing rational people to these solutions in the housing market.
This is our 3rd year running our State of the Real Estate study at the Harris Poll. And this year, the data names something we've been all feeling. We're calling it the housing lockout.
Yeah, so the data showed that half of Americans say the cost of housing is shaping their life more than their career choices. And for young Americans, it's nearly 2/3. John, housing, not your job, not your ambition, it's the organizing principle of a generation's decisions. Where to live, where to work, and importantly, whether to stay or leave the country entirely.
And Libby, 85% of Americans say they'd rather own than rent. Now, I want to stop there, though, for a second, because there's this myth that young people are fine with renting forever, right? This idea that they're nomadic by choice, that they've moved on from home ownership, they'd rather have experiences, flexibility, freedom. We've heard all that, right?
Yeah, and I think maybe that was true at one point, but now we're in a world where financial stability rules everything, and this data says it's wrong. Young people want in. They want the stability. They want the equity. They want the wealth building that every generation before them has gotten from real estate. And the desire is absolutely there. What's gone is the belief that it's actually possible.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's the next logical step anymore.
Yeah, I think housing right now is feeling one step too far removed. 73% of millennials say home ownership feels less like a goal and more like a privilege. So I think we've been misreading this desire for years. We've been calling housing materialism when it's always been about stability, roots, a foundation that doesn't disappear when the landlord decides to sell.
So, Libby, here's the question nobody can answer. What income do you actually need? We found among Americans earning over $200,000 a year, nearly half said you need a $300,000 income to afford a home. Libby, not a nice home, just a home.
That's crazy, John. People making $200K think they can't even afford to buy a house?
And that's across the nation.
Wow.
And according to Goldman Sachs, 41% of workers making $300 to $500K say they're living paycheck to paycheck. The crisis has climbed the income ladder and it's not coming back down. 75% of Americans say starter homes are priced like luxury homes. So really, Libby, the on-ramp that previous generations used, the small house, the fixer-upper, That's all been washed out.
Yeah. And on top of that, the market itself is frozen. So more than 7 in 10 Americans say it feels stuck. Buyers and sellers are really waiting each other out. Most would rather stay put than face new mortgage prices.
Yeah, that's the time we're living in, right? High
Yeah.
inflation and high interest rates. And then that's really the case of this interest rate trap. Most people are waiting for rates to drop before they make a move. Yet we found in our survey, 70% worry that if rates fall, home prices will just climb again. It's a double bind. You can't win. Drop the rates, the prices rise. Keep the rates, and nobody moves.
Yeah, it's basically, John, like a trap with no exit, right? For example, we found that 62% of millennials report paying more in rent than they would on a mortgage. They just don't qualify to buy. They can afford the monthly payment, they just can't clear the hurdles like the down payment, the closing costs, the financial colonoscopy of the approval process. It's just too much.
Well, and Libby, 70% of renters say they'd need a gift or inheritance to own anytime soon. The only path runs through the bank of mom and dad. And if your parents didn't own,
You are locked out of the lockout.
David, having insurance isn't the same thing as having State Farm.
Tell me about it, Gail. It's like wanting to build a podcast called Brands in the Conversation and ending up doing a podcast about bland conversations.
Really, bland conversations.
Yeah. Today we're talking to Mr. Doesn't Matter about a subject that is close to his heart, why what he says doesn't matter.
You wouldn't settle for just any podcast, so don't settle for any insurance. Get the real deal.
Hey, we didn't settle for just any insurance company as a founding partner for Bubbler Media.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Did you know Sam's Club isn't a store? It's actually a club. With cool finds and like a whole community. It's a club.
Of course, Jason. It's in the name. Sam's Club.
Oh, yeah. Come join us. Sam's Club.
once you see the housing lockout, you see it reshaping everything, including who you buy a home with. Aisha Roscoe, she hosts Weekend Edition Sunday on NPR. She just bought a house in D.C. with her best friend. And Libby, not a partner, not a spouse, her best friend. Both are recently divorced, both journalists, and they're now splitting the mortgage and raising 5 kids together under one roof. They call themselves platonic co-parents.
Parents who need a lot of aspirin. I mean, John, this is the new American household.
And Libby, it's not just them. 1 in 6 home buyers last year bought a multi-generational home, the highest share ever recorded. 3 generations under one roof, not necessarily by tradition, by math. People are rewriting the rules of who you build a life with because the old rules price them out.
Yeah. I mean, I personally relate to this so much, John. I mean, I'm in Brooklyn 2 years trying to buy bids, rejections, all cash losses. And I know I'm not unusual.
Yeah. And when the base of the pyramid crumbles, everything built on top shifts. So you have rising housing costs explaining roughly half of the fertility decline in America since 2000. Millions of kids never born because the rent was too damn high.
I know, and having kids is the ultimate act of optimism, and we're pricing a generation out of it.
So what does the housing lockout mean for businesses and brands?
I think one important thing to understand is that your customer hasn't stopped wanting roots. They are desperate for them. They just can't get them the traditional way. So the question for every brand is, how do you help someone build stability when the foundation isn't there yet?
You start with empathy. Stop marketing to the life they're supposed to have and start meeting them in the life they actually have. You know, your 30-year-old customer might be on their 8th apartment. Don't sell them a forever couch. Help them, make wherever they are feel like home.
Yeah, that's so important. And second, I would say help them with their communities, the thing that people are really fighting for, not the square footage, but they're looking for belonging. The brands that help them feel rooted in this place through local events and through gathering, through loyalty to the neighborhoods are the brands that are becoming part of the infrastructure of someone's life.
Third, build other forms of stability. If your customer can't build equity through a home, what can you help them build? Financial products that don't assume home ownership. Maybe membership models that reward staying, not just spending. Anything that says, we see you're building something even if the system hasn't caught up.
I love that. That's so important. And fourth, something that's really exciting is the physical solutions. So now, John, you can buy a fully furnished home on Amazon. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, HVAC unit for $36,000. So you add site prep and permits, you're at $50,000 for a livable home. That's something in a future to be excited about, I think.
Absolutely.
And here's what the housing lockout really means. Housing sits at the base of Maslow's pyramid, right next to food, water, and sleep, and the base is crumbling for an entire generation.
The question isn't whether homes will be more affordable.
It's whether you've accepted that stability is a privilege rather than a foundation. And John, you want to know where I am at personally after 2 years of trying?
Where?
I'm considering buying a spell for my home search. A candle, a crystal, a saint, anything, John.
Lottery over logic.
It always comes back around.
So remember, the housing lockout, your customers aren't just priced out of homes, they're priced out of the lives they plan to build inside them.
Your dinner party stat? Among Americans earning $200,000 a year, nearly half of them say you need at least $300,000 to afford a home. And amongst Gen Z, over half, 57%, say the American dream to own a home is already dead.
Not because they stopped wanting it,
but because the promise broke. And when the promise breaks, people stop believing.
I'm John Gersma.
I'm Libby Rodney. Thanks for listening to So Get This.
So Get This is a Bubbler Media iHeart podcast production. If you're not in the conversation, you're not in the game.
David, having insurance isn't the same thing as having State Farm.
Tell me about it, Gail. It's like wanting to build a podcast called Brands in the Conversation and ending up doing a podcast about bland conversations.
Really, bland conversations.
Yeah. Today we're talking to Mr. Doesn't Matter about a subject that is close to his heart, why what he says doesn't matter.
You wouldn't settle for just any podcast, so don't settle for any insurance. Get the real deal.
Hey, we didn't settle for just any insurance company as a founding partner for Bubbler Media.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.